What happens when a beloved comedian known for her Southern charm and wholesome humor sits down for what should be a lighthearted morning chat, only to find herself defending her entire career against unexpected criticism? Today, we're diving into the shocking moment that left studio audiences gasping and social media exploding. Leanne Morgan, the woman who built her comedy empire on stories about motherhood, marriage, and middle age, found herself in the hot seat when a casual conversation took a sharp turn into uncomfortable territory. If you want to see how a simple question about her comedy style turned into a full-blown confrontation that ended with one of the most talked about walk-offs in morning television history, you're going to want to stick around for this entire story. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about what went down, because this one is wild to poo. The morning started like any other at Studio 1A in Rockefeller Center. Leanne Morgan walked onto the set of Today with Jenna and Friends with her signature warm smile, wearing a colorful floral blazer that screamed Southern hospitality. The audience gave her a standing ovation before she even reached the couch. Jenna Bush Hager stood to greet her with open arms, and the two women embraced like old friends, even though this was actually their first time meeting in person. Sitting next to Jenna was the guest co-host for the day, a popular lifestyle influencer and podcast host named Vanessa Hartley, who had built her brand on what she called radical authenticity and unfiltered conversations. Vanessa had been making waves recently with her hot takes on everything from parenting, culture, to entertainment industry standards. Her presence on the show was part of the network's attempt to bring in fresh voices and younger demographics. The three women settled into the plush chairs, coffee mugs in hand, with the iconic New York City skyline visible through the windows behind them. The energy in the studio felt electric, the kind of buzz that comes when everyone expects a fun, easy segment. Leanne had been on a media tour promoting her latest Netflix special, and every interview up until this point had been filled with laughter and heartwarming stories about her journey from being a stay-at-home mom in Tennessee to selling out theaters across America. Jenna kicked things off with her trademark enthusiasm. "Leanne, oh my gosh, I have to tell you, my mom and I watched your special together last weekend, and we were crying, laughing. That story about your mammogram experience. I mean, how do you find humor in those moments that most of us just want to forget?" Leanne's face lit up, her Southern accent thick and comforting as she responded, "Well, honey, I think that's the thing, right? We all go through the same awkward, uncomfortable stuff, but nobody wants to talk about it at the dinner table. So, I figured, why not talk about it on stage, where at least we can all laugh together? I mean, if we can't laugh about our bodies falling apart after 50, what can we laugh about?" The audience chuckled warmly, and Jenna nodded enthusiastically. "That's what I love about your comedy. It feels like sitting on a porch with your best friend, just talking about life. There's nothing mean-spirited about it. Nothing that punches down. It's just real." Leanne smiled appreciatively, taking a sip of her coffee. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means the world to me. You know, I came up doing comedy in small-town churches and community centers, places where your mama and your grandmother might be sitting in the audience. So, I always knew I wanted to keep it clean, keep it kind. There's enough ugly in the world without me adding to it." This was the moment when Vanessa, who had been quiet up until now, leaned forward slightly. Her expression was thoughtful, but there was an edge to it that wasn't quite friendly. "See, I want to push back on that a little bit, if that's okay." Leanne turned to her, still smiling, but with a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Of course, honey." "Push away." Vanessa set her coffee mug down with a deliberate clink. "I think what you do is lovely. Really? I do. But I guess my question is, does playing it safe actually serve your audience? Like you talk about marriage and kids and getting older, but you do it in this very sanitized way that doesn't really challenge anyone or make them uncomfortable. And I wonder if comedy that never pushes boundaries is really doing what comedy is supposed to do. The air in the studio shifted. Jenna's smile froze slightly, her eyes darting between the two women. The audience, which had been warm and responsive, went quiet. Leanne's smile remained, but it tightened at the corners. "Well," Leanne said slowly, "I'm not sure I'd call talking about my body falling apart or my marriage of 30-plus years sanitized. I mean, I talk about some pretty personal stuff up there." Vanessa nodded, but it was clear she wasn't backing down. "Right, but you talk about it in a way that's comfortable. You never really dig into the hard stuff, the messy stuff. Like you talk about your husband, but it's always these cute little stories about him leaving his socks on the floor or whatever. Asterisk. You don't talk about the real struggles of marriage. The times you maybe wanted to leave, the fights that actually cut deep. It's all very surface level." Leanne's posture shifted. She sat up a little straighter, her southern pleasantness now clearly masking something harder underneath. "I actually think I do talk about the real struggle, sweetheart. Just because I don't use profanity or air out every piece of dirty laundry doesn't mean I'm being surface level. I talk about postpartum depression, about financial stress, about feeling invisible as you get older. I just don't feel the need to make it dark or depressing. People come to my shows to feel better, not worse. But doesn't that feed into this toxic positivity culture?" Vanessa pressed, like this idea that women especially always have to smile through everything. Always have to find the silver lining. Always have to make everyone else comfortable. Maybe what we need is less women trying to make everyone feel good and more women willing to make people uncomfortable with the truth. Jenna finally jumped in, her voice a bit too bright as she tried to redirect. "I think there's room for all kinds of comedy, right? I mean, we need people like Leanne who can find light in dark places, and we need people who are more edgy and provocative. Different strokes for different folks." Leanne nodded at Jenna gratefully, but kept her eyes on Vanessa. "I appreciate what you're saying. I really do. But I want to be clear about something. My comedy isn't about toxic positivity or making people comfortable. It's about survival. It's about finding a way to keep going when life gets hard. And for a lot of women, especially women my age, especially women who grew up in the South, where we were taught to be nice and not make waves, learning to laugh at our own stories is actually radical. It's powerful. Is it though?" Vanessa's tone was calm but pointed. "Or is it just another way of keeping women in their place? Laugh about your problems instead of demanding change. Make jokes about your husband's behavior instead of expecting better. Stay likable. Stay non-threatening. Stay safe." The audience was dead silent now. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jenna looked like she wanted to crawl under the couch. Leanne's smile was completely gone. "You don't know anything about me or what I've demanded or what I've fought for in my life. And honestly, it's pretty insulting that you'd sit here and suggest that because I choose not to be angry and bitter in my comedy. I'm somehow setting women back." "I'm not saying you're setting women back," Vanessa replied. "I'm saying that maybe we should question why female comedians feel like they have to be so palatable, so non-threatening to be successful. Male comedians can be raw and honest and even ugly in their comedy. But women, we have to be sweet. We have to make sure nobody feels too uncomfortable." Leanne's jaw tightened. "You know what, honey? I'm 56 years old. I have been performing for over 2 decades. I have built my career exactly the way I wanted to build it, on my terms, telling my stories. And the fact that you think I'm doing that because I'm afraid or because I'm trying to be palatable, ... that says a lot more about you than it does about me." Vanessa didn't flinch. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, her expression remaining neutral, but her voice carrying weight. "I'm not questioning your success, Leanne. Obviously, you've done incredibly well. I'm questioning the system that rewards certain kinds of female voices while marginalizing others. And I think it's worth examining why the women who make it big in comedy tend to be the ones who don't threaten the status quo. Leanne let out a short, humorless laugh. The status quo. Honey, when I started doing comedy, I was a 40-year-old mother of 3 from rural Tennessee with no connections, no agent, and no business being on a stage. The status quo didn't want me anywhere near it. I had to fight for every single opportunity I got. So don't sit there and act like I was handed anything because I smile and don't drop F-bombs every other word. Jenna tried again, her voice strained with forced cheerfulness. Ladies, I think we're maybe getting a bit off track here. Leanne, why don't you tell us about some of the fun moments from filming the special? I heard there was a hilarious incident with the lighting crew. I just think we can acknowledge that certain types of comedy get elevated in our culture while other types get dismissed. And the comedy that tends to get elevated, especially from women, is the comedy that makes people feel comfortable. The comedy that doesn't ask hard questions or challenge power structures. What power structures are you talking about? Leanne's voice rose slightly. I talk about the healthcare system. I talk about the beauty industry. I talk about how women become invisible after a certain age. Just because I'm not screaming about it doesn't mean I'm not saying it. But you're saying it in a way that lets your audience off the hook, Vanessa countered. They can laugh and feel good and then go home without having to change anything or think too hard about their own complicity in these systems. That's what I mean by comfortable. You're not asking anything of them. The camera operators in the studio were glancing at each other nervously. One of the producers standing off to the side was making cutting motions with her hand, signaling to Jenna to wrap up the segment, but Jenna seemed frozen, unable to figure out how to diffuse the situation without making it worse. Leanne's hands were gripping the arms of her chair now, her knuckles slightly white. So, your version of good comedy is comedy that makes people feel bad about themselves. Comedy that lectures and scolds. Because I've got to tell you, sweetheart, that doesn't sound like comedy to me. That sounds like a TED Talk with a few jokes sprinkled in. That's reductive, Vanessa said, her tone still maddeningly even. I'm talking about comedy that provokes thought, that makes people examine their assumptions, that pushes culture forward instead of just reflecting it back in a more amusing package. I'm talking about comedy that helps people survive their lives, Leanne shot back. Do you know who comes to my shows? Women who work 2 jobs? Women who are taking care of aging parents while raising kids. Women who are exhausted and overwhelmed and just need one night where they can laugh without feeling like they're being judged or educated or told they're doing everything wrong. That's not selling out. That's compassion. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. But doesn't that compassion become enabling at some point? If we just keep telling women it's okay, it's fine. Just laugh about it. Aren't we preventing them from getting angry enough to demand change? Maybe some of us are tired of being angry, Leanne said quietly, but with intensity. Maybe some of us spent enough of our lives being angry, and we decided there had to be another way. You're what, 35? 36. You still think anger is going to save you? I'm 56. I know better. So, you've given up, Vanessa said. It wasn't quite a question. The audience gasped audibly. Jenna's eyes went wide. Even the camera operators seemed to tense up. Leanne stared at Vanessa for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she carefully set down her coffee mug on the table in front of her. The clink of ceramic on wood seemed deafening in the silent studio. No, honey, Leanne said softly, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. I haven't given up, but I have learned the difference between fighting and performing. And right now, what you're doing, this whole thing where you pretend you're challenging me, but really, you're just trying to make a name for yourself by tearing down a woman who's been doing this work longer than you've been out of college. That's performing. That's not brave. That's not radical. That's just mean. Vanessa's calm facade cracked slightly, a flash of defensiveness crossing her face. I'm not trying to tear you down. I'm trying to have an honest conversation about the limitations of your approach to comedy. My approach, Leanne repeated slowly. My approach has sold out theaters in 48 states. My approach has built a community of women who feel seen and heard and valued. My approach has created something meaningful that actually helps people. What has your approach done besides make you feel intellectually superior? The tension in the studio was suffocating now. Jenna looked like she might cry. She opened her mouth to say something. Anything? But Leanne was already standing up. You know what? I think I'm done here, Leanne said, reaching up to remove the microphone clipped to her blazer. This isn't an interview. This is an ambush. And I don't have to sit here and let someone half my age tell me that my life's work is worthless because it's doesn't fit her narrow definition of what's acceptable. Please. Jenna finally found her voice, standing up as well. I'm so sorry this wasn't supposed to go this way at all. Please don't leave. We can talk about something else. We can move on. But Leanne was already unhooking her microphone pack from the back of her pants. She handed both pieces to a shocked-looking producer who had rushed onto the set. Sweetie, this isn't your fault, Leanne said to Jenna, her voice softening slightly. You've been nothing but kind, but I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected on national television. I've worked too hard and too long to put up with this nonsense. Vanessa finally stood to her feet, her composure fully shattered now. I wasn't disrespecting you. I was engaging with your work critically. That's what discourse is supposed to look like. Discourse is supposed to be respectful. Honey, discourse is supposed to assume good faith, Leanne said. You came in here with an agenda, and you used me to make whatever point you're trying to make about comedy or feminism or whatever it is you're selling on your podcast. And that's fine. You do what you need to do, but I don't have to participate in it. The studio audience was completely silent, watching the scene unfold like they were witnessing a car crash in slow motion. Several people had their phones out recording despite the studio rules against it. I have an agenda. Vanessa's voice rose for the first time, anger seeping through. You built an entire career on performing a version of Southern womanhood that's palatable to mainstream America. You're basically a minstrel show of your own culture. But sure, I'm the one with an agenda. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just gone off. Jenna gasped. Several audience members made audible sounds of shock and disapproval. Even the crew members looked appalled. Leanne went very still. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear, cutting through the chaos like a knife. That is the most condescending, elitist, disgusting thing anyone has ever said to me in my entire career. You want to talk about power structures? How about the power structure that says a woman with a degree from a fancy school and a podcast gets to tell a woman from the South that she's performing her own culture? How about the power structure that says the only authentic way to be a woman is your way? You don't know me. You don't know where I come from. You don't know what I've survived. And you certainly don't get to stand there and tell me who I am. Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but Leanne held up a hand, stopping her. No, I'm done listening to you. I came here this morning excited to talk about my work, excited to connect with viewers, excited to share some laughs. Instead, I got attacked by someone who thinks being cruel is the same thing as being smart. You want to know what the real problem is with women in comedy? It's not that some of us choose to be kind. It's that women like you have decided that the only way to lift yourself up is by pushing other women down. You call it critical discourse. I call it exactly what it is. Jealousy dressed up as feminism. That's not fair, Vanessa said, her voice shaking slightly now. The cool composure completely gone. You don't get to dismiss legitimate criticism by calling it jealousy. That's what men have been doing to women forever. Leanne's laugh was sharp and bitter. Oh, honey, don't you dare try to flip this around and make yourself the victim here. You started this. You came after me. You sat there and systematically tried to tear apart everything I've built. And now that I'm pushing back, suddenly you want to talk about how women should support each other. Where was that energy 10 minutes ago when you were calling my career surface level and sanitized? Jenna was standing between them now, her hands up in a placating gesture, tears actually visible in her eyes. Please, both of you, can we just take a breath? This is getting so out of hand. Leanne, I promise you, we had no idea this was going to happen. Vanessa, I think maybe we should move on to a different topic. But neither woman was listening to Jenna anymore. They were locked in on each other. Years of different experiences and perspectives and frustrations all colliding in this one explosive moment. Vanessa's voice cracked with emotion as she spoke. I'm not jealous of you. I'm frustrated by you. I'm frustrated that you have this massive platform and you use it to tell women that everything is fine. Just laugh it off. Just keep smiling. I'm frustrated that the entertainment industry rewards that while women who are trying to actually say something meaningful get ignored or told they're too angry, too aggressive, too much. Don't you see how that's a problem? Leanne shook her head slowly. No. What I see is a young woman who hasn't figured out yet that you can be authentic and kind at the same time. You can challenge systems and still treat people with respect. You can push for change without being hateful. But you haven't learned that yet because you're still operating from a place of anger and resentment. And maybe that's where you need to be right now in your life. I don't know. But don't project your anger onto me and act like I'm the problem because I've moved past it.